When I think someone has an attitude or a preference regarding like a proposition, right, or a moral proposition, I just take that to be some sort of moral intuition, right, on what someone perceives. So if God has the moral intuition, right, that killing, I'm just giving some example, right? You can just fill in the blanks with whatever you want, but I'm just going to put in some norm for the sake of argument, right? So if your God has the moral intuition, right, that killing is wrong, right, then I don't understand what would make his moral intuition any different from my moral intuition, right? Unless you're saying that this God appeals to something external to himself, or to claim that there is like some sort of categorical basis, right, for why one ought not do certain things that are written in the Bible, right? So go ahead. I want to know, right? Is God either appealing to something external to himself, or is he using a basic moral intuition just like anyone else on this earth?
Well, there's actually two ways I can go about doing this, and one of them you're not going to like. So how about I stick to the one that I think you'll be able to deal with? The first one is that I believe that God is using himself as a means to determine whether or not something is right or wrong, since he is perfect and you are not. That is a bad example. Number two, if you just sat here in a hangout or a show with me of all people and just admitted that you're doing something just like God and trying to be just like him, I don't know if you just admitted this or not, but you're calling yourself a theist at this point, because you're trying to make yourself to be your own God when you sit there and you say things like, well, I'm just doing the same thing that God does. God is appealing to his own personal opinion on how he believes the world should be governed, and I'm doing the same thing. And if you're doing the exact same thing, then you are attempting to be a God at this point. I would have loved to start this that way, because then I would have preached up to you and just told you that you know that God exists, you just suppress the truth and the righteousness, and you would have just killed yourself. But I don't need to do that because you just did it. Anyway, go ahead.
Look, the reason, well, I'm going to address the first part, right? Then we're going to get with the meat of the matter for why the answer you just gave wasn't substantive, right? So to answer the question on why would it be a God, right, is because God by definition has some type of disembodied mind. And I don't take myself to be disembodied because I reject the mind-body dependency relation, right? The second reason why the answer doesn't work that you just gave, right, is because I don't see why perfection, right, would be any criteria for distinguishing, because the question I asked you, right, was just that whether or not God has a moral intuition. And if you bite the bullet on the horn, right, and you say, right, that God does have a moral intuition, I don't see why perfection would have any basis, right, for getting you off that horn. So go ahead. Okay, explain to me why perfection would make any difference to the argument I just presented.
Well, for starters, God can use himself as a moral basis because God doesn't do anything wrong. You understand what I'm saying? You do. Okay? When you lie and you hurt other people, because you know, I'm just going to appeal to your nonsense when you guys believe that empathy is the way to do everything and whatnot. You guys lie and hurt people on a regular basis. You guys slander people on a regular basis. You guys do a lot of things on a regular basis that will hurt other people. God doesn't do those things. God is always trying to help people out and trying to help people grow and learn. Now, you said that you defined the God that I worship as a disembodied mind. Do me a favor. Give me that scripture where it says that he's I could have swore it said that he was a spirit. But show me where it says that he's a disembodied mind.
I just take a spirit or something that's immaterial to be a disembodied mind, because a disembodied mind simply means a mind that doesn't possess a physical body.
Right. And you are not going by my claim. You're making up claims and then saying that that's what.
So do you think God has a physical body?
I'm not done. So as an atheist, you're supposed to hear my claim first and then reject my claim, because I think that's how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to be rejecting my claim, but it sounds like you're making my claims for me and then rejecting.
I affirmed that I was correct because you said God was a spirit.
Wait a minute. Hold on. And when we do start talking about God being a spirit, I'd appreciate it if we did it with something other than science, because I don't use science to understand every single thing that goes on in this world. That's called scientism, and I'm not into that religion. But if you want to talk about it, by all means, go ahead.
I don't understand what you're talking about, right? You made the claim. You said that God was a spirit, right? And I just equate a God being a spirit to be a disembodied mind, because spirits are immaterial.
A whole lot more to it than that. You just said a disembodied mind. Assume that I agree with you. And just went
on. Is a spirit immaterial? Yes or no?
Well, spirit is material, but God also revealed himself in the material world as well.
Well, that's irrelevant, right, to whether or not he's a disembodied mind.
I'm sorry, you forgot about Jesus. I didn't. And I'm also thinking about the entirety of God's word, not just some cherry-picked passage that you might be looking at. So again, if you want to know why I believe that God exists, I believe that I'm intelligently designed. I believe that you're proof that he exists because all you do is fight him all day and make believe and pretend like he's not real. And I believe it's going to fail. It's going to be bad for you later on. And I also believe that you know that God exists because you use the Bible, believe it or not. You just admitted that you do what God does. Who's this guy on the screen here?
What guy?
This bald-headed guy named Landon Labraro or whatever.
It's Landon.
Yeah,
He's quiet. He's our media coordinator.
He's not completely
just let it go.
Yeah, he's acting like a. I don't
My
know if
mic
he knows this or not,
doesn't
but he's
even
acting like
work.
an
Bear.
Oh, that would make him the second.
Poor bear.
You don't need to be mean, Gman. Look, he's playing video games, Landon.
Mean,
Why don't you go ahead and mute yourself? I'm sorry, I wasn't done. Landon, go ahead and mute yourself, bud, so that you're not interruptive of the conversation.
So, okay, so look, right, if
Thanks,
God,
buddy.
so if God doesn't have a spatial, if God has a spatial extension, right, or is physical, right, then that means that God would be under the laws of physics by definition, right, if he's physical. So either God's physical or he's not physical, right? And if he's not physical, right, that means he would be immaterial, right, and not controlled by the laws of physics. And that's all I mean by disembodied mind, right, is that God does not possess a physical body.
Okay, so you believe you're an atheist because you rejected out of the Bible?
Well, I believe the concept is incoherent.
Okay, so you believe that the concept of God is incoherent, the concept of the Christian God, right?
Right, all gods, but yeah, the Christian God, yeah.
All gods? Wait a minute, all gods?
Yeah, all
Can
gods,
you do me a
yes.
favor, because you sound like you know something about it. Can you define for me these other definitions for gods for me, if you don't mind, since they're incoherent, without your buddies helping you? I would like for you to hear those definitions. If you don't mind.
They haven't been helping me at all, but look, I just take a God, right, to be some personal being, right? Either he interacts with reality or he doesn't, right? If you were going to talk about a pantheist conception, right, I don't know in virtue of what we would call that a God, so I would just approach that differently, right? Since they're just defining the universe to be a God, and I find that uninteresting. But if we're talking about any other conception, like a deist or a theistic God, I don't think those make any sense.
In order to be an atheist, sir, you have to reject all claims of gods. If you was talking to, let's say, a member of the Kemetic community, or if you were talking to a 5%er or a pagan, how would you prove that their God isn't real? Since they use a totally different definition for their God, since you believe that it is logically incoherent.
Well, I would just ask them how a concrete object could be necessary.
Well, what does that got to do with the definition of, let's say, the Kemetics claiming to be gods?
Well, I'm not familiar with their view.
Okay.
What's their view?
Basically, human beings are gods, and women are divine, and all the.
I would just ask him in virtue of what would be considered that a God, right? If it's physical.
Well, there's several different definitions for gods. For example, I had a debate with a guy by the name of Alex Botton, and I put it to him like this: when we're talking about human beings attempting to be gods like himself, that's when a person makes their own final when they make themselves out to be their own final authority. And they're their own personal rulers, and that's how you basically describe these modern day atheists today. Nobody tells them what to do, and nobody rules over them.
Well, I don't define that to be a God.
I'm not done. Modern day atheists also exalt themselves way too high than what they already are. Like, for example, they claim they have education about things that they don't. They claim that no one is smarter than them. They believe that only they are enlightened with the things that's going on in this world. Okay, they have elevated themselves to some type of a deity. Now, when I debated Alex Botton on this, and he attempted to debate this topic, I gave him an opportunity to study and look this stuff up. He didn't want to do it. He was cocky and conceited and decided to have that conversation. Anybody who's watching this can go take a look at what happened. Now, I'm gonna ask you now, Yuri. All right, can you prove that the claims that the Kemics, that without using the Christian worldview, this is going to be difficult for you? Okay, can you prove that the Kemics, the 5%ers, and these pagans and these neo-pagan gods are not gods at all? Please use their definitions and explain to me why they're not gods and why you don't believe in them.
Right, because I just take either a disembodied mind or a concrete object that's necessary, right, or a physical being not to be a god.
Okay, so pagans worship the earth. You walk on it every single day. What is the definition that they're using? And why don't you believe it's a god?
Well, they're prescribing some sort of spatial extension, right, to the notion of a god, and I don't take that to be a god, right, when they prescribe some sort of spatial extension.
Okay, and then we have atheists who are Leviathan Satanists who are claiming that they're their own deities as well. Can you explain to me why they're not gods? According to their definition, by the way.
Well, I just think they're equivocating what someone means when they say a god. That's all I think.
I don't think they're equivocating. I think that you're operating on ignorance, and I don't think you know what you're talking about. When a Leviathan Satanist says that they're their own gods and goddesses, they're basically saying that they're their own rulers and they do whatever.
Well, they would be equivocating.
I'm not done. Hold on a minute. One of their battle cries is they do what they want. They do what they want. They do what they want. See, the only person that can really say that at the end of the day is God. Since he created everyone, everyone's beneath him. He does what he wants. We as human beings have to be obedient to somebody. You, on the other hand, are trying to sit there and try to say, okay, I'm an atheist because I don't believe in a Christian God. Well, my friend, you got about 4,000, 5,000 other religions out there that got different definitions for gods that I've never seen an atheist even try to
It's all irrelevant. Look,
yes, they God. The last time
that's all irrelevant, right?
Yes,
That's all irrelevant. That's all irrelevant, right? Because I said I define a god as some sort of personal absolute that's either concrete or necessary, right? Or is disembodied, right? And if they're not meeting that criteria, right, and they want to say that God is physical, or they want to say something else that we are gods, right? I take that to be some sort of language dispute, right? On what we're referring to be a god, right? And if they just want to play language games with how they're defining God like that, I just don't consider that to be a god. But anything else besides that doesn't exist.
Every god is not defined by the way the Christians describe their gods. Again, I believe that atheists have an issue with the God of the Bible because they know that he exists and they don't like the things that he did.
It doesn't exist.
Or you got an issue with the flood. I'm sorry. No, you don't. My bad. You don't think the flood was a bad thing. My bad. I forgot. The flood was a good thing according to your meta ethics and whatnot, right? And you also had no problem with God killing.
That's a straw man, and you're being dishonest when you say that.
Oh, okay, I'll tell you what. So
why would you misrepresent him like that?
Was it morally wrong for Matt Bell to do what he did with those kids? And was it morally wrong?
This is a change of the subject.
Was it morally wrong for God to flood the earth?
This is irrelevant.
No, it isn't. I'm conquering that nonsense about meta ethics. And then number two, I'm showing you how irrational.
Jerry, why don't you let him correct you on this? You just calm down. Calm down, Gman. You're misrepresenting him. Why don't you accurately represent his position? Or let him correct the record while you're misrepresenting him. Go ahead, Yuri.
I'm not misrepresenting him. You're an atheist and you're agreeing with him. Go ahead.
When did he make the claim that he thought the flood was a good thing?
Well, when he claimed that
out of your ass.
Category, when he claimed that there's no such thing as a absolute amount, right or wrongs. You see?
Yeah, but you understand. Wait, G-Man. You understand that if you try to make the claim that he said the flood was a good thing, that's an absolute right.
Okay. So was it an absolute bad thing?
No, I'm just pointing out that you strawmanned his position.
Is it an absolute bad thing?
I don't see the relevance of that question.
Is it an absolute bad thing? Yes or no?
I'm simply pointing out that you strawmanned his position.
Why are you like that a dog pile poor G-Man? Why are you doing that? Why can't you handle him one-on-one?
Hey, God, let's go. What do you think he'll think if I came to his house and right in front of him, I pulled a rifle on his mother and blew her head off? Would that be considered right or wrong when I did that? Absolute, by the way. Or he's going to say, well, he shouldn't go to jail because, according to his own personal opinion, what he did wasn't wrong. You know what I mean?
The atheists will start moralizing, G-Man. The atheists will start moralizing.
Exactly. They'll start saying, I'm a terrible human being. Put me on the electric chair, electrocute me. Most of them are getting on my case because they're claiming I support Matt Bell. You know what I mean? While coming in here and then talking about some,
this is a weird left turn.
Categorically, well, I'm going back to the meta ethics thing. As far as the God thing goes, you already was refuted with that. But I'm talking about as far as with the morality thing goes. Sir, you cannot sit here and try to tell me that there is no such thing as absolute right or wrong. If I came there and I raped your mother, there is no way in the world you're going to sit there.
What's the argument?
Oh my god.
That there was
I don't understand
reason why he did what he did. That's nonsense, and you know it.
Gman, now we're gonna get the Kathleen Tanner, the Christian, in the room to align. She's gonna align with the atheists.
Okay, let's see her do it. I'm pretty sure of it. Let's hear it.
What am I getting ready to do?
You're gonna start agreeing with the atheists against Gman.